Welcome back on WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station. This is Straight Talk Radio, and today you have B, Mazi Oke Okachku, and we also have on the phone with us my other co-host, Mazi KK Odeluga. Kenendubai.
Welcome to Straight Talk.
Welcome to Straight Talk. Sorry we started a little bit later, having some technical difficulties, but we are on now, and today is our Global Saturday. Today is our Africa Saturday, where we discuss everything Africa, unlike our Global Tuesday when we discuss everything happening around the globe. So today we'll start talking about things going on in Africa, and as you usually do, we will start from the continent and then we'll drill in and end up in West Africa, eventually end up in Nigeria, and in Nigeria we'll end up on the south part of Nigeria where the Igbo people come from, because your co-hosts are from the Igbo group in Nigeria. So welcome and join us. Last week we discussed the politics in Nigeria eventually when we got there, and we talked about the other parties after talking about the big two parties the Saturday before. But today, just like we started last Saturday, we want to continue the discussion on politics and where Africa is going and where Nigeria is going and where Igbo is going. So as I started last Saturday, we talked about Paul Biya in Cameroon and the election being contested. Well, just like I predicted and just like everybody assumed, after that long wait, the courts have declared Paul Biya, who's now the oldest serving president in Africa, to be the winner of the just concluded election. So the opposition party and their protest and their court rulings, they should have, they did the right thing by going to court to get redress, but the court has ruled, and Paul Biya is now on his, I don't even know what term it is. He's been there since 1983 or 84, I believe. So he's one of the longest serving presidents in Africa. He's the oldest. Mazi Odeluga, any thoughts?
Again, that is the so-called democracy African style. For as long as I've been alive, I remember two presidents of Cameroon, the Nigeria's neighbor to the east, Ahmad Ahidjo and Paul Biya. Yes. Now, the question is, does that mean that there are no other fresh leaders that could come out of Cameroon? And where the power of the incumbency is used to perpetuate leaders way into their octogenarian age? That's troubling. That is troubling. You know, we saw that in Zimbabwe with Mugabe until finally somebody had to get him out. So the question is, what kind of democracy are we practicing in Africa? Or is this another way of colonial perpetuation of stooges and cronies that are left by the ex-colonial masters who have left? So Biya must have been in Cameroon because the French likes him.
Right. And since we're talking about Cameroon, so this is given the context of what's going on in Cameroon now, where the Anglophone part and the Francophone parts are in dispute, where the Anglophone part is saying, well, we're not being treated right and we want our own place, we want to secede, we want our own country, we want Amazonia, I can't get it right. But why that is, I may be laughing, but it's not funny. Why that is troubling is because these are Africans who are being divided based on the foreign language that they speak. So I know that it's much deeper than that, but to look at somebody who could have been, who is your brother, but just because there's a language line or because you were colonized by British and the other colonized by French, and you decide to treat somebody different just because some foreigners showed up and decided to colonize you in your own land, so you treat them differently or you treat them badly, whether it's the French side or the English side. What are your thoughts?
I mean, that's also part of the vestiges of colonialism that it still dominates African politics and African life, where the identities of the people are no longer shaped by who they know they are, but what they have been told that they will be and what they have never become. The Cameroonians cannot be Frenchmen, neither could they be Englishmen.
Right.
I mean, is tragic that those are the kinds of issues that divide Africa. And if you go beyond Cameroon, that's what you find in the West African sub-region, where the so-called Francophone countries and Anglophone countries do not really work together or try to collaborate to create a common market like they have desired to, which is ECOWAS. So you still see Africa in this dilemma of identity. And Africa is in an identity crisis, and she must find herself and actually walk away from the colonial identities and the colonial influences and the things that have continued to hinder her ability to create nations, which she had always, to function as nation states, which we used to do, which we used to be long before the Europeans came. So in Cameroon, you have a very tragic situation. You have a Francophone, first of all, going back in history, Cameroon was colonized by the Germans.
Yep.
And when the Germans lost the war, the French and the English decided to split Cameroon into two.
Yep.
And so the English-speaking part became part of the British colonial government of Nigeria, while the French stood alone. Then 1960, Nigeria was given the so-called independence, became a separate nation, Nigeria, and the southern Cameroon was part of it.
Yes.
The English-speaking part of Cameroon was all part of Nigeria at independence in October 1, 1966. By 1961, a referendum was organized, supervised by the United Nations, but organized, under the supervision also of the British. And so the English-speaking part of the Cameroon decided that they were going to go and become part of the larger Cameroon, join their French-speaking compatriots. And this is the experience they're having. Now they're coming around saying, look, ever since we came together, we have been treated as second-class citizens in our own land.
Yep.
Because we speak English.
So, Paul Biya, what that means is what will be best for Cameroon is that they resolve their differences, and that if they have decided that Paul Biya is the guy, and it seems like that's what they've decided, for the upteenth time to continue to, as they will say in Africa, rule that nation, then he better rule it right by amalgamating, like I'm using the words of the colonial people, amalgamating the Francophone and the Anglophone sides to make a Cameroon phone side, if there is any such thing. But it would be great if the Cameroonian people will understand that they are the same people and treat each other right, so that if at the long end that the Ambazonian people want to leave, well, bid them safe journey and give them what they need for their safe trip, so that your headache is less, your stress is less, and you live within your own walls. And hopefully they make good fences, because good fences make good neighbors, and live like Africans, not as colonized people. That's my hope. I don't know if you want to say anything before we move on.
No, I agree with you.
So Mazi Obasi, my other co-host, has actually joined us. And Mazi Obasi, say hello to our listeners. Hello, welcome. So we started talking about Africa, and we just finished talking about Paul Biya and his election being upheld by the court after the case was opened by the opposition. So if we moved a little, actually, also talking about Cameroon, they also have issues like we have in Nigeria on the northern side, not given all the problems they're having with their southern people. They have Boko Haram causing all kinds of problems for them, similar to what it does for Nigeria on the northeast side of Nigeria. Mazi Obasi, any thoughts?
Well, yes, I was listening to Dr. Mazi Odeluga's eloquent diatribe, and I must say I absolutely agree with him. I think in looking at Africa especially, we have to recognize one fundamental problem. In most of African states, we are still ruled top-down. In other words, we are still perpetuating the kind of rulership that was foisted on us by our colonial masters.
Yes.
Therefore, in country after country after country, whoever it is that has the central government, controls everything, controls all the instruments of state, including the security instruments, which we have on previous, on previous programs, recognized that in a lot of African countries, the state security apparatus is used as a means of control internally. So, yes, absolutely. If you see the Boko Haram movement, and this is not at all to whitewash the horrors of what they have wreaked on that part of West Africa, northern Cameroon, Nigeria, Chad. But that in itself is also an issue of self-determination.
Yes.
And perhaps we should begin to look seriously. Instead of looking from the top down, perhaps it is time to have a serious paradigm shift to begin to move power back to the people in the places of their abode.
So you're saying that maybe the AU should use one of their conferences as a way to get Africa back to where it used to be, because the Europeans decided after World War to come together with Bismarck and divvy up Africa. So maybe we should come together and actually
relook at Africa
and restructure that word.
Well, absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that, because at the end of the day, every single human being deserves to live in peace with himself, his family, and his neighbors.
Yes.
And I think we would agree in much of Africa, it's not working very well right now.
Peace have eluded a lot of people in Africa.
Yeah.
Mazio Delega, any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on having a conference where we do undo what Bismarck and his cohorts did when they divvied up Africa? All right, I think Mazio Delega may be speaking on mute, so we will move on, and when he comes back on, we will hear him. So the other thing that is happening is, now I'm moving way into Nigeria, we may move out again, is Kaduna, the northern part of... Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Yes, sorry, there was a delay.
Go ahead, Mazio Delega.
Oh, okay. So sorry about that. Yeah, that is true. But that is something that Africa seems to be avoiding. Not only is Africa avoiding it, but I believe that the old colonial brigade, I call them the old colonial brigade, because they are actually the majority of the members of the Security Council, minus, you can't really, identify any of the countries that make up the 5 members of the Security Council that have veto power, seem not to want that for Africa. So any part of the world, we've seen Yugoslavia, you've seen the old Czechoslovakia, and we've seen realignment in the East Europe, within the Balkans. People move around and shift around. We see as USSR, disintegrated. Everybody went back to their common affinity of nationhood, and things are working for them. But ever since the 60s, tell me which African country that have not been in political crisis, and those things have continued to deepen. And as you really look down and drill it down, it goes down to the identity and issues of bringing peoples together that have no common affinity or who would like to work together. It's forced marriages that have been concocted all across Africa through essentially what was done at the Berlin Conference in 1885. So, yes, I think it is time for Africa to stand up and begin to solve her problem by asking the people, who do you want to deal with? And let's work it all out. We've always existed as neighbors, as peoples together, and work together. We've had our differences, but we've now seen this, inability to form national identities based on the contraptions that the Europeans put together. Because that is the problem. You cannot go to look at Cameroon is split between, and that is really schizophrenic. Right. English and French.
Yep.
And it has nothing to do with who they are as people from Manfe or people from Bamenda and all the other people groups within Cameroon state. And most of them have neighbors and I would say siblings across the border with Nigeria.
Yes.
People they share cultural affinity and relationships, Yes. So it is high time Africa stood up and solved that problem.
Exactly. Well, but that's the issue. So the communism came, split Berlin into two, split Germany into two. Today, Germany is back as one country.
Yep.
Yes.
And the world allowed it.
Yes. And
and then communism arrived Africa, and Africa became the battleground for the Cold War, which has nothing to do with Africa. Today, you don't hear about communism in Africa.
No. Well, we will soon with China leading the way, but that's a different story altogether. So, yes. But I mean, I like what you're saying, and I like where this conversation is going, because what Africans haven't done is to sit down and say, I mean, what is best for Africa? Why would you have within Kenya this tug of war between nations that want to be not as the British marked them or as their colonial masters put them together? Why in Cameroon we'll have to go through that? Why in Congo? It happened in Sudan, which we ended up with South Sudan. And why I wanted to get to South Sudan is I know a lot of people will look at that and go, wow, but we gave you that chance in Sudan and you got South Sudan.
And you blew it.
And what's going on right now, right? But it's a singular, I mean, it's the what did Chimamanda say? It's
a single story.
Yeah, it's still a single story. Yeah. It's not the same for everyone. It's different for
besides that, South Sudan also has external influences that are playing a
role.
I think the biggest failure to me, all things aside, the biggest failure is the ability of Africans to begin to think pan-African.
Yes.
Even as they solve solutions locally. And the reason I say this, remember, some time back, we had talked about the fact that, especially in Francophone Africa, every time there is any movement,
before they breathe, they got to ask for permission for the air.
And anybody who makes an attempt to break away from the stranglehold of France, that government is toppled.
Oh, yes.
And
Libya is saying thank you right now.
Well, automatically toppled. And if you look at it, go and look at all the people who have toppled governments, military coups in West Africa. All of them were members of the Foreign Legion.
Yep.
Yes.
So, the fact is, it is very hard as a country, single country, to move in that direction because your masters are even in Nigeria. I want to point out to you that a lot of what is happening in Nigeria is engineered from Britain.
And may I also add South Africa there, because Nigeria, South Africa is a different story, but it's still engineered outside South Africa.
So at the end of the day, these things are allowed to happen because Africans, when we need to think globally, we think local. When it's time to think local, we centralize.
Yep.
So we have turned life upside down. And perhaps if we start to write it, then maybe we can truly consider ourselves, quote unquote, independent.
So
Yes.
I think it's time for a break. So I will take a break and we will come right back and we will continue the discussion. Once again, you're listening to Straight Talk on WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station. We'll be right back.
I am Mazi KK Odeluga. Mazi Ejikebe Obasi.
Now, Mazi, okay, Okachuku.
This is Straight Talk Radio, the world as we see. Coming to you from WGHC 98.3 FM. Your voice, your music, your station.
Listen to us this and every Saturday at 4 to 5 p.m. U.S. Central, and this and every Tuesday at 9 to 10 p.m. U.S. Central. Welcome back to WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station. This is Straight Talk Radio. Straight Talk, if you're joining us for the first time, is a current affairs and news program from an African perspective, also from a Nigerian perspective, also from an Igbo perspective, because the three co-hosts that you have on this program come from Igbo nation of Nigeria. And well, if you don't know where Nigeria is, I'll help you out today. It is in West Africa. It's actually the last country in West Africa, bordered by Cameroon, that we're talking about, that starts the Central Africa region.
Yes.
And so Nigeria is the start of the West, and Nigeria is right by the boundary of where that Atlantic curves a little bit and starts going south. And Nigeria also is bordered on the north by Chad and goes into the Sahara. So when you hear sub-Saharan Africa, it mostly covers West Africa, and Nigeria is on the far east part of that, which is the start of the West. So that's where we're from. That's where we speak from. So when we say it's from an African perspective, from an Igbo perspective, from a Nigerian perspective, that's the perspective we bring, because that's where we got our start before we ended up where we find ourselves. So we give you our opinions on what's going on in the world. Especially today, which is Saturday, we discuss things that happen in Africa. And on Tuesdays, if you join us between 9 and 10 p.m., you hear us discuss the globe, which is the world, and what's happening there from an African perspective, from an Igbo perspective. So today we are discussing, we're going to eventually get to the politics that is going on in Nigeria, because Nigeria will have its elections on sometime in February 2019. So people are getting ready. The primaries for a lot of the parties are concluded, for both the local and the presidential candidates, some juggernauts that are known, some new people, new faces. The encouraging thing is a lot of young people. There are tons of parties in Nigeria, political parties, and each have a lot have picked their president. So we will get there eventually. But what we were discussing was our neighbors to the right, which is Cameroon. And where we started was the last week. We did talk about what's going on with the elections that were just held. A lot of elections going on in Africa. And Paul Biya, who's been there since 1983, maybe 84, but if you think I'm saying it wrong, call us or let us know on Facebook if you're watching us live on Facebook, or call the radio station and correct me. But he's been there for a long time, and he won the election. Actually, while he was sick and out of the country, he still won the election. At least the results showed. And then the opposition said there was a lot of election malpractice. Took him to court, and the court have decided that yep, Paul Biya is the president. The incumbent retains the position in Cameroon. So we discussed all the issues with Cameroon, with Ambazonian, the Anglo-speaking part, trying to break out to an Ambazonian country out of Cameroon because they don't think that they're being treated fairly and equally by their brothers. And we also, before we went on a break, talked about the menace of Boko Haram, and that led us to talk about what's going on in Africa. So that served as a context for African solutions for African problems. How can Africans solve this problem, which seems to be, as Cameroon is evidencing, a problem of foreigners with undue influence in a country? How could people who were not born with that mother tongue of English or French be fighting over that, as that being the dividing line? So we're saying for Africa to solve her problem, we have to look within Africa, but one singular country, as the colonial people have put it together, may not be able to do it. You have to go beyond those colonial boundaries and form many nations to come to the table. You, if you're listening, or what's the one in the West?
EU.
Well, AU is the African Union.
Yes.
But I'm talking about the ECOWAS, right? The Economic Community
for
of
West Africa.
of
Yes.
West African countries. If you're listening, we think you should have on your platform the next time you meet what you have to do about all these countries and setting Africa on the right footing. Because a lot of things that are happening within AU and ECOWAS has nothing to do with Africa. It's actually about selling out Africa to the highest bidder. And the current highest bidder is China. So, Mazio Deluga, what do you think? Is AU the right people?
Yeah. No, AU, I don't know if AU is the place. What you ask yourself, who are the political philosophers of our day among the African leadership? You see, there was a time you heard about Zik of Africa.
Yes.
You heard about the Bongo GK. You heard about Kwame Nkrumah, Patrice Lumumba, and
Julius Nyerere.
You know,
and I know,
and Jomo Kenyatta, and and then Nelson Mandela.
Yes,
these were voices that understood who we are, and they wanted to see Africa stand on her feet and do what she knows best to do, which is live out her life according to her own values and standards. And those voices have been shut down. So what you have now are
mercenaries,
stooges.
Yes,
like
people who
yes, puppets.
Yes,
that
and none of them can stand up and articulate a vision of freedom, of thought, freedom of thought. Because the issue is not whether you have your own national anthem, you have your own flag, but if you cannot think you cannot think freely and be able to move your nation, your people in a direction that best fits them, their character, their cultural values and norms, then you have not succeeded. We've borrowed systems and imposed it on our land, which is not indigenous. Our people don't have the feel for it. We had ways that we had governed ourselves, and it had worked for our ancestors. That's why Africa was a great country before the Europeans came.
A great country.
When they saw us, we were not cannibals and we had not destroyed each other. We had built great civilizations and kingdoms that have impacted Europe and influenced Europe. People will not tell you, but the truth of the matter is it was because Mansa Musa went to Mecca and across Europe to go to the to Mecca that the Europeans saw the wealth of Africa. And
because yes, I quite agree with you. Between Sandhurst and the French Foreign Legion, Africa has we have issues to work through. Well, yeah, let's leave it at that. However, if you look at the amount of the intelligentsia currently existing that have come out of Africa, look at the number of people who are aware of the situation that live both in Africa, yes, and outside of Africa. I still think that Africa could be better. I think what is missing is, again, the ability to begin to cross-link. Because you see what happens is, I give you an example. You have Cameroon. You have people, let me even use a better example. What's this young man, a parliamentarian who has been speaking out very strongly, I believe,
Oh, from Kenya.
From Kenya.
Yes, yes, yes. My very good friend, the lawyer. Yes.
Yeah. How is he faring?
Yeah.
How is he faring? Because there are more than enough institutions out there that are willing to shut down voices of revolution. And really what you need in Africa is a revolution. You have to have a total rethink of the way we do business, of the way we carry out our relationships, and of the way we perceive the world around us. It is a shame. It is a shame. If I may take us back, 1967 to 1970, in a tiny enclave called Biafra, completely surrounded, blockaded by sea, air, and land, you were able to run hospitals efficiently. You ran feeding centers. You built, you had a very robust research and production unit. Soap, toiletries, ammunition, all of them were built inside Biafra under extremely difficult conditions.
In less than 3 years.
And we have not been able to replicate it in the rest of Africa till today.
Not even in the same parts in Nigeria.
What does that tell you? It's a shame.
It's a shame, but it means that we are allowing foreigners to block us from things we could do.
But that's the point.
Allowing people to hang.
That is the point. In Biafra, you had no choice. It was either change, or die. So people chose to change. That is the kind of mindset we need in Africa. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yes, yes. Yep. Yes.
Well, there was, except they were all on the Nigerian side.
Right.
Yes, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
In the world.
Yes.
Because of the airlift that was coming out of Sao Tome and Gabon.
Yes.
And those things were handled with rudimentary technology, just radio frequency, not just even big, what's it called, radar support for those aircrafts to come in.
Yes.
And so, you see, the point is, we have what it takes. And I like what Mazombasi raised up, the intellectual power of Africans. See, part of what has happened is, unlike the intellectuals of the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, the current generation of intellectuals have been told to stay within the ivory tower, to churn out papers so that they get promotion, they become professors,
titles, yes,
and they have no relevance in the public square.
Yep.
No relevance. So there is no public discourse like you saw from people like Nzimiro in Nigeria.
Yep.
Or people like Bongo. That's not, the scholars of today are waiting to be appointed into political offices so that they will also become part of the problem. Not actually educating the people or even trying to mold a new generation of leaders who will perpetuate the Afrocentric perspective. No.
So
we are borrowing systems from overseas. We are actually denigrating some of our cultural values and principles. And in the mode of what the missionaries condemned or the colonial masters condemned, we have written off a lot of values that have held us together and helped us in our own civilization in years past.
Yeah.
Simply because somebody says it's no longer cool, or maybe we don't like it.
Right.
I mean, think about artifacts that are all over the museums of Europe and America, straight from Africa, that are earning great revenues for those countries because people are paying money to go and look at African artwork and cultural artifacts, which we were told were idols, but have become iconic art crafts.
By the way,
for the European museums?
A few months ago, I forgot which country what that was. I think where the British was saying, "Well, we got this artwork that is from your neck of the woods, and we have it, but you could borrow it for an art show, but you got to return it. It's yours. We got it. You could borrow it, but you will return it after." Yeah. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? You have my stuff, and you're telling me I could borrow my stuff from you. You're now the custodian of what I have, and you give it to me on loan, and I have to return it back to you eventually. That is silly. But you mentioned Pan-Africanism before, and we mentioned people like Nyerere, Kwame Nkrumah, Zik of Africa, Bono Jike, a few of these people. But also part of that Pan-Africanism, and why I'm mentioning this is because you said African intellectuals, how lazy they've become, and how their inspiration and their aspiration is different. But what happened then wasn't that it wasn't left just to the Africans, not even just to the African students that came, that left Africa and went elsewhere to get their education and go back, but also some of the Africans who left Africa a longer time ago, people like W.E. Dubois, Marcus Garvey, even Malcolm X at some point, became part of the Pan-Africanism movement. So what is the role of people like us who found ourselves in the dispersion? If we are saying that some of the African intellectuals at home are distracted with some other things, how about the people in diaspora? Are we of the same cloth that we have gotten so safe and secure in our positions or enjoying our new space? What's stopping this movement from here? Or from the dispersion?
Yes, there are a few intellectuals that you could call activists. But remember, for most African immigrants, the first order of the day is to get a tenure.
Survival.
Yes.
And so they're not going to ruffle any feathers until they feel that their livelihood is secure. And depending on where their station of life and their vision for themselves, their scholarship, again, they are producing papers and writing for journals that where they require that those publishing houses may edit some of your views and actually shape your thinking because certain things are not acceptable. I say that because I and Mark Obasi, we were part of a project to write a book on genocide, about the Biafran genocide. There was a publishing house that rejected the first manuscript because one of the reviewers felt that majority of the authors came from the southeastern part that were part of the Biafra, that we needed a balance and an opinion from the Nigerian side, which is almost like asking a Jewish scholar writing about Holocaust
to get a Nazi.
Go get the Nazi side.
To find a Nazi scholar to give a perspective of what happened to the Jews.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
So you have, these things are multifactorial, but again, it goes back to that idea. We must be independent thinking. We must understand who we are and be willing to create institutions that will be a voice for our own perspective. But that's why Straight Talk, to me, is part of those efforts.
Yes.
That the African diaspora must embrace, and WGHC as a radio station, one of those things that the African diaspora must embrace, because this is our voice. This is where we have our music. This is where we can speak freely and give our own perspective in the discourse that is going on in the global village.
Avoid the dangers of a single story.
So we are speaking out on WGHC. But I also want to say, while taking nothing away from what Mazi Odeluga has said, I also wish to point out that the world has changed.
Yes.
In this day and age, social media has significantly altered the way news, views, and activism is being, pursued globally. I think let's break it down, really break it down. So we live in Chicago.
Yes.
We, Straight Talk Radio, the world as we see it from an Igbo perspective. Yes, there is a place where Ndi Igbo in Chicago may gather.
Yes.
Not everybody comes, but let's give them that they have a gathering place. Do we have a place where all Nigerians, regardless of tribe and what part of Nigeria they come, sit down together to say what is good for Nigeria?
There used to be such a place.
Well, there used to be.
Yes.
Now, if you leave Nigeria, leave the Francophone West Africa, Ghana is our closest Anglophone neighbor.
Although there are two people.
Okay. Yeah, well, so, yes.
Yes.
So, now on an informal basis, on a day-to-day basis, Nigerians and Ghanaians do interact quite a lot. Is there any formal platform where we can sit down together and say, as the two countries that carry the bulk of Anglophone West Africa,
yes,
where do we sit down and say, this is what should be happening, so that we can bring along the smaller English-speaking West African countries?
I don't even think we agreed on trade.
Well, no, so forget Ghana and Nigeria in Ghana, and I'm talking about here in the diaspora.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, it is, if you look at Poland, if you look at Lech Walesa, and the, the movement, the solidarity movement, I forgot what it was called, a lot of the impetus came from Chicago.
Yes, it's solidarity.
Solidarity movement, okay. A lot of the impetus came from Chicago. If you look at a lot of, especially the Baltic states, Lithuania, and the Baltic states, there is a lot of influence that is coming from America.
Yes.
So, we here in America cannot divorce ourselves from the fact that in pursuing life, the pursuit of what?
Life and the pursuit
health
of
and happiness.
Yes.
We are in many ways neglecting our duty to Africa.
Well, I guess it's all part of that pursuit of happiness, because if you think you're going to be happy in Chicago and your brother is unhappy in whatever part of West Africa or Africa that they're part of, your happiness is not complete.
Well, look at what's happening with migrants in Libya, and across in Europe.
In Italy.
Who sees those pictures and is happy? Who sees those pictures and is happy? And yet, all of us, the three of us on this radio program, we know the solution.
Oh, yeah.
Fix where these young men and women come from, and that problem goes away. Incidentally, Europe knows the solution.
Oh, yes, they do.
But it is still in their best interest to leave Africa the way it is, because of the fact that in terms of chaos, that is when they reap their best.
It allows them to get what they want. Theresa May was happy to get down to Africa.
It is the narrative that these people don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, well.
You understand? Because now, like the Igbo will say, the man who is really at the root of the problem is the first to raise the alarm and say, by the way, who's causing this mess? Because the mess in Africa is the opportunities are not there for young people. The economies are devastated because of monies that are stolen and deposited in European banks, and development aids that go into government coffers that end up coming back to Europe, or development monies that are spent in Europe but executed in Africa. So you really don't see generation of jobs, but creation of dependency. And so now Africans are marching across the Sahara to go to Europe to pursue those opportunities that are there. And then the doors have been blocked and the borders have been shut. But you see, I like what Mazioba is saying regarding the role of the African diaspora. Interestingly, a lot of those Pan-African, those who championed the Pan-African movement have brought new ideas into the African political discourse. Young men and women who were trained not in the capitals of the colonial nations like France or Britain, but those are the people who came through America. And so it is interesting that the values of liberty, the understanding of the American civil rights movement, it's needed.
Yes.
It's needed. Those values need to be championed again. And it's those of us who are breathing the air of freedom and understanding the values and the history of America that could also champion those kinds of ideas to extricate our people from the logjam that they are in. You know, because frankly, we have leaders who do not understand the world and could not see a future for Africa within the global village.
Yes. And and why I wanted to talk about this is because when we were talking about what's happening in Africa with the people there, with the leadership and AU and ECOWAS, we were mentioning that it's not something that just one country could undertake and be successful at it, because there are still a lot of forces against you. I know, to give an example, what happened with the Ambazonians was when their leadership decided they were going to skip the country because of the heat and go to Nigeria. Nigeria promptly arrested them and sent them back to Paul Biya. That's not the kind of support you will expect from your brother. You would think that somebody will say, hey, this guy came to me, but I'm Benabem. So let me take this opportunity to try to hear you both out and fix this for you. But I'll leave that one and then come back here to what we're discussing with us here in the diaspora. If we decide to take it on, if Mazioke decides he's going to take this on and champion this all by himself, well, it's a daunting task. We're not going to do it. If all Nigerians decide, you know what, we're going to tackle this whole Pan-African thing, then it will be a Nigerian thing, not a Pan-African thing. If we want to get it done as Africans in diaspora, it has to be done by Africans in diaspora, and it has to be a party. And by that, I don't mean someplace where you go to dance. I mean, it's got to be more than one person. It's got to be more than one country. It's got to be a representation of a whole lot of people, because
yes, absolutely.
Mazio Basi, anything you want to say? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mazio Deluga.
No, and that conversation should not be an emotional conversation, but it should be a truth. How will I put this? Yeah, people are transparent and honest, understanding where we've been and articulating where we need to go.
Yes.
With the historical background of knowing that we used what we did among ourselves and what we've been able to accomplish in the past and what we could accomplish together. You know, because oftentimes a lot of Africans, we don't really know how we came to be where we are. And that is really a huge problem. You know, because our history is not discussed or taught. We focus on learning everybody else about everybody else minus ourselves. So we have all been educated. So the first order of business will really be to rediscover ourselves and to find ourselves. It's amazing how many ethnic cities that we have within the West African sub-region. Many of them out of Nigeria are meeting Togolese who are Yorubas. Really, technically. They either a father, or a mother, grandfather, or grandmother are Yorubas. There are so many Liberians that have roots in Igbo land, in other parts of Africa. You know, you have the Ewe people in Togo, Ewe people in Ghana. You have, you know, Hausa people in northern parts of Nigeria, of Ghana, and other parts of the Republic.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, but, you know, again, Of course, the Fulanese are spread out in the northern part around, the foot around the foot of Jollof Mountain, in that regional area. But the point is that we need to sit down at that table of brotherhood and have a conversation, not just among the recent African immigrants, but also the larger African diaspora, Africans from the Caribbean, Africans from South America, and Africans in the Americas, all together talking about how can we rebuild the African nations, and so that Africa will be of value to her people and then to the world in a way that is more meaningful.
If you really look at it in a slightly different context. So you have the European Union.
Yes.
They do not all speak the same language.
No.
They do not all have a common heritage.
No.
Some parts of the European Union did not interact with other parts of the European Union until modern times.
Yep.
But they understand the concept of common destiny.
Yes.
And therefore they come together for the benefit of all. Even though now it's beginning to
it's just
come apart a little bit. But again,
one person,
okay,
or one country.
So take another example. In many ways in America,
yes,
when you talk about Hispanics,
yes,
Latin American or Latina,
that's Latino,
people,
right?
Yes, a lot of them do not historically, traditionally, are very different.
Oh yes,
but I guess because they have been forced to, they have come to become quote unquote one block.
Yes.
You look at Nigeria.
Wow.
So this is the issue. To begin this renaissance, I think this is not, unfortunately, what happens a lot with us is that a lot of the organizing is created by politicians and politically minded individuals
who have their own agenda,
who ultimately have an agenda that does not quite meet what is.
It's not a long-term view, like they want a short-term gain.
But again, I point out, you have intellectuals.
Yes.
We have very brilliant intellectuals here in America. Forget about the rest of the world.
And I think it's high time we started writing our own papers for our own consumption.
And begin to drive this movement. That's the point I am making. Begin to drive this movement. Economists can come and show you why it is important to have a big market.
Yes.
Whether you are buying or selling.
Yes.
There is power in numbers. Okay? Social scientists can come and show how amalgamating a larger group of people makes it difficult for petty squabbles between tiny individuals to become something big.
Shared risk,
shared reward. Yes. So that is the paradigm shift I would really like to see begin to happen. So anyway.
Yeah, just like you were saying, man, Robert, not to interject, but there used to be a time marriages where the diplomatic covenants, the fact that this ethnic group and this ethnic group are intermarrying, they will live at peace.
Yes.
Because, I mean, if you go after them, you're going after your daughter or your son.
That's right.
Or the kinsmen that eventually come from those offspring.
Yes.
And there was respect for that, So you're right. And I think that's where we need to really, to find those scholars who are willing to engage in this conversation. And then, that's something that, Straight Talk and WGHC should consider and champion.
And maybe, see if we can pull together some serious-minded scholars from different parts, at least starting with West Africa.
Yes.
Yes.
That, the parliamentarian Lumumba, I would so much wish to have him on our program. PLO.
Yes. So I like the conversation, but we have to branch. But before I branch off of that, I'm going to say this conversation that we're talking about, this renaissance of African diaspora people thinking about Africa. I know that when we're talking about it, we're not thinking about what do you do tomorrow or next year. We're thinking about the long view, something that may take decades to materialize. And I mean, I think also that if there is benefits that happens tomorrow, we'll take it, but
We'll
it
take
has to be
that
a
too.
long view. The other thing I want to mention is something that we said about people who come, like I did, and a lot of people are still coming. We come here and we focus on the things that brought us here. And you want to be able to get that education so that you achieve the thing that you left seven rivers, seven seas, seven oceans to get over here for, and that's all well commendable. But ịma na ọkụkọ soro ụmụ ya ọkụkọ na-akpa nri anya ufe akọ na ya which
Yes.
na ọkwasị ụmụ ya onye tụrụ ji ya tụrụ
To the
mgbọrọgwụ.
bubble.
So
Yes.
what that means is while you're getting that education, do not forget the long view. Do not, have a peripheral vision
Yes.
wide enough that you could actually be able to think long term. After I get all this, how does that all square
Yes.
with me and my family eventually, if you don't have one yet, and then my larger family that it may be extended all the way back to the mother continent.
Yeah.
So, anything before we go on a break and come back and talk about
Well,
Nigeria?
no, I very much like this conversation we're having because I am hopeful that enough people out there, and I'm speaking now specifically to people that live in the United States, enough people will listen to this program and be moved to begin to break away from the mold that we have been casting, which is narrow, tribalistic, and invariably leaves us in tiny little pockets where we are all very vulnerable. Yeah.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a break and we will be right back. And you're listening to Straight Talk Radio on WGHC 98.3 FM.
I am Mazi Ejikeme Obasi.
Na Mazi Oke Okachukwu.
This is Straight Talk Radio, the world as we see. Coming to you from WGHC 98.3 FM. Your voice, your music, your station.
Listen to us this and every Saturday at 4 to 5 p.m. U.S. Central, and this and every Tuesday at 9 to 10 p.m. U.S. Central. Welcome back to WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station. You're listening to Straight Talk. Straight Talk, like I discussed before, is a current affairs program that gives you a world view from an Igbo perspective. Igbo people are from the southern part of Nigeria. Nigeria is in the western part of Africa. Africa has many nations. It's not just one country. And if you've been listening to us and you want to be part of this conversation, you could join us by calling the number 773-942-7167. And we could listen to you. We don't assume that we know everything. We don't. We actually know there's a whole lot that we are missing. So we like to learn from our listeners. And if you are not chance to call us at 773-942-7167, you could also leave us a comment on the multiple groups, or one of the multiple groups where this is being shared on Facebook. We're on Facebook Live, and we will see your comments. We have it up, and we want to thank those who were listening to us early and those who are listening to us now. I know that one of the people that jumped in was Ike, the musician Adolphe, and we want to thank you. We saw you. We were just so into what we were saying that we didn't have a chance to say hello, but we appreciate your listenership, and those that join us constantly and always often, and even those that watch later on and just watch the video. We thank you all, and we will see your comments. And when we do broadcast the next time, we could talk about your comments if you leave them whenever you listen to us. We thank you. We enjoy you. We appreciate you. And we want you to be part of this conversation and to help educate us. For those who are only listening to us on Facebook, you are missing something. If you haven't gotten your TuneIn app, if you have Android or Windows equipment or phone, go to your store and download the TuneIn application. And on the TuneIn, find WGHC 98.3 FM. You could listen to us anytime, not just when Straight Talk is on. There are other programs on this radio station. Actually, all the programs on this radio station are really, really great. But you will find ones that are really great for you. There is Righteous versus Ratchet. There is what's the one that follows us on Tuesday, or the one that comes before? There are just so many of them. So many. So you will find many more of them. A lot of them like Straight Talk. Some of them that are different, that could fit your style and tune. So if you are on Apple equipment, you could just download from the Apple Store WGHC 98.3 FM app, and you could listen to us anytime. We have more than talk, we have music, we have cultural shows that come on. We actually have shows that span way beyond Africa and Caribbean. So when you listen, you will find out what you'll be missing. And I bet you that once you find it, once you get that application and start tuning in, you will not be able to stop. So thank you for those that listen. Also, this radio station is a community radio station, and we are public supported. We are not for profit, and we do not pay any of the presenters or any other people that work here. We are all volunteers, but we do need your help, and we thank those who have supported us and those who continue to support us. If you are yet to, please go to our page at wghcfm.org and click donate button, which you will find on the top right hand corner. We really do thank you for all that you are doing, for listening to us first, for praying for us second, and for giving to us third. And we will share our thanks and sincere thanks when we get your gift. And for those that actually are given, we really do appreciate it, and we thank you and hope that you continue to give, and that this radio station is helping educate and fill a void and helping carry your message and ours to more people who need to hear it. And all donations are tax deductible, as we are a 501c3 organization. So thank you. We will now get back to our show, which is Straight Talk Radio on WGHC 98.3 FM, your voice, your music, your station. Straight Talk Radio, our world as we see it from an Igbo perspective. So we've talked about Africa. We went all the way to ECOWAS. We talked about those in diaspora and how we should and what we should do with this new renaissance that is coming on board. That WGHC and Straight Talk will help make sure that we move along. And now I want to talk about Nigeria. And one of the things that happened in Nigeria is things that we hear so often that is so heartbreaking. And pictures, of course, that they send. And I have to plead with you people that put all these violent pictures and pictures of dead people and pictures of people caught up on Facebook or any place in social media. Please stop. Because one of the things I am afraid of is that the relatives of these people may see them first, dead or maimed, on Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp or wherever you're sending those. Please stop. I mean, you could describe what's going on without those gory pictures. I'm speaking just for me. I know some people may say, no, the world needs to see it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm torn about this. I know the world needs to know what's going on, but I don't want those pictures seeing them messes up my entire day.
To support what you say the world wants to see it. Well, I disagree. Most people do not post pictures because the world needs to see it. It's sensationalism. So you click and send to as many people as you can, just so you are sending something. The fact still remains. If you see videos of violent actions against human beings and you're sending it and you have not tried to send something or, okay, what are you going to do about it?
Yes.
Are you just sending it to me so I can see? I don't want to see it.
Yes.
I can hear the story, understand the story, especially if you can do nothing about it.
Yes.
It is the same thing, there's a lot of things that we really need to start self-censoring.
Yes.
It does nobody any
kids
good.
Maybe see, I don't want to desensitize anybody. Absolutely. I don't want people to think that this is normal. It is not. Yes. So why I'm saying that is because something happened in Kanu. A fight broke out. Something that actually you think that has gone away, that never happens anymore, especially with Nigeria, since we've been living as neighbors. Although most of us are having a lot division by the waters in Nigeria. We have Muslims mostly in the north and Christians mostly in the south, and the west is kind of a mix.
Yes.
But in Kanu, a fight broke out between the Muslims and the Christians, and got into one of those fights where they start using machetes and guns and start killing people mercilessly with pictures that abound everywhere. And the other thing was that before this happened, according to news, the governor Rufai, who used to be a minister, had flown out of the country and was abroad when this all happened. And he came back and declared a curfew. But the story is fight broke out between Christians and Muslims that ended up killing lots of people and maiming a whole lot of others. And in 2018, we are still going through this nonsense.
No, you see, please, let's not get tired of speaking and telling the world what's going on. You see, that is what the hen cried out and said when everybody knew that the hen will always start crying in the middle of the day. He said, the reason why I cry because the kite took my baby.
Yes.
He said not for the kite to drop the hen.
I just want everybody to know.
The chick, but for the world to hear her voice that she didn't kill her child. What has happened to her? Now, there's a measure of truth in that, but also a measure of truth in what Mazi, Obatian, and okay, you all have talked about.
Yes.
That, yes, hen, you're crying. We now know what the kite has done, but the kite has had this habit of picking up your cheek. At what point should we now address the kite?
The kite's action.
Or are you a willing participant in this whole mess?
So, because it's no longer a question of maybe she's not protecting her cheeks very well, but it's just that the kite is notoriously attracted to killing the cheeks of this head.
Yeah,
we have Muslims in among the Yorubas.
Yes.
We have Muslims in Anibo.
Yes.
How come these fights do not break out?
Right.
Why does it have to happen in Kano, in Sokoto, in northern part of Nigeria? It is because there is a prevalent hate speech that is always simmering and going on within the communities of the north.
Yeah.
Railing against outside the people they call infidels, the people they call Nyamiri, the people they call outsiders, the people, of course, they call Christians. So that at any little excuse, how come the machetes are always available?
Yeah. And how come
because you hear a little fight, the machetes are out immediately. Which means they were stored, sharpened, and kept in readiness.
The security agents and apparatus are nowhere to be found until way after all this is happened. That's right.
That's right. And then somebody comes and now says, everybody stay home.
Right.
No.
Of you.
No. No. So, again and again and again, you hear these stories of the inability of the government to protect lives and property. And somebody is always at the receiving end of this violence, and it's usually the Christians.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in southern Nigeria, where you have Muslims and Christians living together, you don't see these fights breaking out in Lagos, in Ibadan, in Ogbomoso, and some of the other Yoruba states with Christians and Muslims living together. In fact, among the Yorubas, you find Christians in the same and Muslims in the same family.
Well, yes, and you're living in the same neighborhood, in the same
neighborhood, yes. Attending each other's festival.
Yes,
because there's the absence of this hate speech, and that is really the issue that needs to be addressed in Nigeria. There are people who are instigating the violence.
Yeah. So let us begin to look at some of the factors that are actually driving these acts of violence. Because the reality is, I had on an earlier radio program discussed an experiment that I heard was done in Palestine in the days when the PLO was waxing strong and there were a lot of terrorist cells from Palestinian Liberation Organization. And a group of people took out some PLO supporters, young men, brought them out and got them to be married, got them to have children, helped them move into a life with a job, and then after some years came back to them and said, things are not good. We want you to go back into maybe become a suicide bomber.
Yes.
And to the last one of them, they said, things have changed.
Yes.
Why do I resuscitate this story, which I am not even sure is true?
Yep.
But I think the basic tenet of it is northern Nigeria.
Idle minds,
Yes, the idol is a devil's workshop.
Yes.
Northern Nigeria has always had this culture of disenfranchising the lowest of the low. So you have these Almajiri schools where you go and get a Muslim Islamic education.
Yes.
And nothing else.
No skills.
No livelihood, nothing. And you are therefore dependent on a Megiddo for your livelihood. This is some of the things that Alhaji Aminu Kano, or Malam as he liked to be called, Malam Aminu Kano, fought very strongly against. Emancipate young men and young women.
Give them skills.
Allow them, absolutely. Why is it that in 2018,
unemployment?
No. Look at
it's not unemployment.
Look at Nigeria.
Yes.
Look at Nigeria from when did we gain independence?
60
to 2018.
Yes.
At the time of independence,
58 years.
Northern Nigeria said, delay independence to allow us to catch up.
Yes.
I want to say that today in 2018, the gap may be, if anything, widening.
Wider than it was before.
Why? And yet, who has ruled Nigeria for all those years, both in military and civilian capacity? So, you call a spade a spade. The elite in northern Nigeria have disenfranchised their own people.
Right. So there are a few in the north, and I say a few because, well, if you count the population, Rufai, who's the governor,
yes,
went to the best schools.
Yes.
Atiku, who's running for presidency, actually, his father had to answer a query for him not going to school, and he eventually, with the intervention of the then government, was able to go to school.
Okay.
A few other people, I mean, there are a few names out there that went to school and are doing way better. Why is that not a beacon? Why is that not an example for the rest to say, you know what, this whole education thing works. Hate Western education all you want, but getting people skills for life.
Oh yes, life skills. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That is rational thinking. But for the Fulani aristocrats who colonized the northern minorities, part of the agenda is to under-educate and underdevelop the peoples under their control. There is no Hausa Emir, no other Emir in the north from any other ethnic group but from Fulani. The Fulani came under Usman Dan Fodio Islamic, so-called Islamic reform, but actually a jihad that took over swaths of land and created the Sokoto Caliphate and made a deal with the British when Captain Lugard conquered them in, I think, 1815 or 1814, that they will not allow missionaries, they don't want missionaries coming here with Western education. They wanted their system to be left intact, their system of government. And so from even through the colonial times, you had direct rule by the emirs and the House of Chiefs in the north. They had their own emir, their own soldiers and police. And those infrastructures are still within the north. And only the children of Osman bin Fodio, the descendants of this great house, have ruled and controlled the governments of the North. And also Nigeria. There has never been an Hausa president or military ruler within Nigerian history. So that tells you that it is a deliberate policy of the North. I did my youth service in Bauchi. I served in Kirifi in 1987-88 time. And we were told, and I saw that happen, there were people from the government who will come and promote education. Everybody, please go to school. At the end of that whole drama, the hierarchy of the town, who is the chief, will call everybody and say, start going to the farm. I had children, I had pupils, students in class 5 getting ready to write the West African School Certificate who come to the clinic that I was running and could not speak English. And you wonder how they wrote the exam.
That was given.
You see the admission scores for JAM scores for those from the northern states going into universities. It's almost like once you sign up for the exam, you are automatically admitted. But, people going into from elementary schools to the federal unity schools.
Yes.
What is my point? Let's not deceive ourselves. We have a foreign government run by the Fulanis within northern Nigeria that is perpetuating an aristocratic and tribalistic style of leadership that does not want to develop the people. The Alamajuris are natural creations so that when they need people who will do stuff like you see happening all over the North and Middle Belt, they have cannon fodder for them. They have foot soldiers they can activate for political gain. But I am not the only one saying this. Remember when the new Sadrona came, that was what he was talking about.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he was trying to blame the northern political leaders for that problem. But they were saying that it is because of the Almajiris that we have Boko Haram and the violence in the north. No, it is because of the culture and of hate speech that has been perpetrated in the north against others who are not strictly following what they want or what they desire. That is what is fueling the violence. But do they have youth under development and under education issue? Yes, but it is deliberate.
So, I agree.
Yes.
Okay. But flip it a little way. Nigeria is still a country.
Yes, it is.
In that country, we have institutions. A man draws a salary as the Attorney General of the country.
Yes, he does.
Another man draws a salary as the head of police of a country.
Yes.
Public service.
From even prior to independence till today, there have been outbreaks of violence, including the pogroms of 1966.
None of them have been able to.
Has anybody in Nigerian history ever been held responsible for fueling mass murder, hysteria?
And to add to that, the one thing that I hate is to watch them come on and have a press conference after where all they say is we're going to find the perpetrators and bring them to justice.
And then a panel
and then you read later and you find out that actually there were rumors that this was going to happen.
Absolutely.
There were inkling that this was going to happen. And it seemed like they knew because what happened was they withdrew all the security forces to allow it to happen. And then they bring them out way after it has happened. And nobody looks into that. There are no studies done. There are no investigations that really get published. It's just they make these announcements and they go away. And then we are back to where we are in Nigeria.
It goes right back to where we started. If you are a big fish in a small pond,
you dictate what happens to the prawns.
The minute you become a big fish in an ocean where you will now really begin to see big fish, you learn to behave.
Well, I want to tell the Nigerians listening that you're actually in a big ocean right now because it's 2018.
Yes.
Social media is, internet is everywhere. The cell phones are everywhere. You actually see what's happening in every country around the world 24/7, real time as it's happening. if you're seeing the rest of the world the way they live, even where there is a little bit of violence, you should be able to ask yourself, how do I compare? How does my life compare to these ones? Are you happy the way you're living? Are you thinking that this is the best you could do? If you're waiting for somebody, if you're waiting for somebody else to free you from the shackles, when you already have found out and discovered that you're in shackles, you're wasting your time. You should be able to start making some move to get yourself free, so that somebody sees you trying to do that, will realize, oh, this person realizes that they're shackled. Actually, they didn't want to be here. But if you're listening and seeing what's going on in the world and you are sitting pretty, somebody's going to look at you and say, what do you mean? I mean, they're free to go. They don't look like they don't seem to be like they want education or any skills. They're happy where they are.
The part we're even not talking about is, under Jonathan, if I'm not mistaken, they did set up vocational schools
that follow
not just vocational schools. Nomadic education has taken millions and millions of that.
Now, NGOs are there doing exactly the same thing too.
Because the one has to put this on the table very, very squarely.
Yes.
This is actually an indictment of all the emirs in northern Nigeria.
Yes.
Who, by the way, went to some of the best schools in the world.
Yes.
Many of them are graduates of London School of Economics.
Harvard.
Some of them came out of Cambridge, Oxford, Yale, Harvard.
And you come home and supervise
go to school.
Mass ignorance, then you know what? You are truly, truly a horrible person.
Well, I also think that they do not know, or they are thinking that maybe it's somebody else's problem. You're building your house on sand.
No, I think this is deliberate. I think this is deliberate. I don't think you can give them the past that they do not know. Like we pointed out, a lot of them are very well educated. They go to Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
They see what Saudi Arabia has been able to afford their citizens.
From Saudi Arabia.
So don't tell me they do not know.
Yes.
This is Madiga Gotoku Zoni Mula Mahapu Munne Kochichiri Jideha.
Yes.
Absolutely.
No. It is a deliberate policy. And make no mistake about it. What we're talking about is skill acquisition and creating opportunities for their people
to get them to go learn that Jesus is.
No. You see,
or learn democracy.
You know that the BBC has been broadcasting in Hausa language for more than 50 years.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
So in terms of knowledge and information,
they have it.
The average Hausa speaker is informed of global events and trends.
In his language.
In his language. So, in terms of cultural competence and having a depth of knowledge on their own, based on their own language, they have that. When I was in the North, the only English-speaking program that you will see on television was the network news by 9 p.m. Every other business in Bauchi was conducted in Hausa, including when you go to the local government, if you go to the Bank of the North, it's Hausa. People wrote their checks in Hausa.
Yeah.
And they transacted business. So the people are quite, in terms of cultural competence, language, but the issue is, why are there no vulcanizers in the North? Why are there no mechanics in the North? Why are there no physicians, pharmacists? Why are there no chemists, biology teachers in the North? Why do you have to rely on expatriates? And expatriates that I'm talking about are not Nigerians.
Yeah. It's
from India, it is from Pakistan, other Muslim-speaking countries. And they will, like Fabiola said in that 1954 interview with IPS, that he's not going to hire an Igbo for any job in the North, that he was first going to hire an expatriate. The point that I'm making is these young men and women have the capacity. to go to medical school.
They are not heroes, they are not foreigners. You could train them right there. You don't need to hire anybody.
No,
you don't need to.
Well, that's the point.
They are not motivated. They are not allowed to, as it were, because what you find is the majority of the northern boys will go to Islamic studies. Yeah. The girls will end up in Islamic studies. If you go to MBU, the few people who are coming there from med school, and they are from the royal family. So it's a deliberate policy. Now, when there are events like this, because they now start, perpetuating their anger against the Igbo that came from all the way from the east, or the southern that came to be able to provide goods and services in the north.
Yeah, commercial service. Yeah.
Well, so the question
and then the man is successful because he's put in the work.
All of us in the U.S. pride.
He's traveling overnight to buy goods that he will sell to you. Then you visit him with your anger and you murder him on the street and you destroy his business for no reason other than his order.
Yeah, I don't know. So the question is, because if you look at, I don't know about Kanu.
Yeah.
If you look at, I know there was also a similar incident in Kaduna. Okay.
In Abuja.
What I want to say is, if you look at the incident that occurred in Kaduna, a lot of the perpetrators on both the Christian and the Muslim side were indigenous.
Yeah.
Killing themselves.
Yes.
So it has gone beyond, because if you look at this problem, it used to be violence directed against outside groups that have come into your especially southerners.
Yes.
Now this ethno-religious violence is now indigenous, so brother is killing brother.
Yeah.
And which again blows a huge hole into this quote-unquote one north myth. At the end of the day, I will still go back to a very simple concept. If you come to southern Nigeria, if you look at the way Ndi Igbo were educated in the 50s, communities, people of means, any which way you could, you see a bright child, you find him a way to get an education. So if you had a rich uncle and you had the mental capacity, they put you through school with the understanding that when you come out of school, you help put somebody else through school. A lot of the early civil servants that ended up, people who went to England and came back, they were trained either by rich uncles or the community pooled money to send them to school. If you go to Yoruba land, I cannot pretend to know exactly how it happened, but it is clear that there was a lot of education. And then Awolowo made free education a policy.
Coco.
Yes, and stood by it to really lift up Western Nigeria educationally. Where were the emirs in northern Nigeria when all these things were happening? Especially, sorry?
More specifically,
yeah.
Where was Sagana's policy for the education of the northern minorities and all the ethnicities within the north? Like you stated, he was one of those that argued that the north is not ready for independence because they have not enough manpower to do what? To be able to participate in the government, right? Yes. Or to govern themselves. So from 1954, when the Western region and the Eastern region were semi-independent, autonomous, and having their own governor general that are indigenous, the North was still under colonial rule up until 1957 and all the way to 60. Now, the issue is that the Saglana and the Northern political leaders subsequently have never had a policy to educate their people. And in fact, I will go further to say, when the federal government, with the unitary government that now prevailed, systematically education was targeted by the Fulani oligarchs to destroy education in Nigeria. If you look at every policy that they have instituted, the underfunding of education, the lowering of the standards, the centralizing of the curriculum, you will find out that what used to happen in the East and in the West in those days, where people had independence to be able to choose what they want to study or teach their children, that we had better public schools than we have now.
Yes.
Well, and okay, so you look at it because, again, trends. One needs to watch trends very closely. Look at what is happening in Eastern Nigeria today.
Yep.
Young men and women who are alumni of old, good boarding schools have come back and put their own money to upgrade the quality of the educational environment and the quality of education in public schools.
Yep.
Tomorrow,
know the value of what they get.
Yes, well, no, the point I'm making is tomorrow there will now be again a schism. Look at, we have said it here, under Peter Obi,
Yep.
Anambra State shot to the top in terms of secondary school education and has stayed there.
Yep.
I personally believe very strongly that there is no Nigerian who is a dumb Nigerian.
No.
It doesn't matter where you come from.
I've met all kinds of them outside here in the US, and they are all right.
That there is a great disparity is because of local effects. Yes. And so, once again, I put the blame squarely on the emirs in northern Nigeria.
I have to correct one thing. I said Kano when I meant Kaduna.
Kaduna, okay.
Rufai is in Kaduna.
Good, because good. Okay, so that's where this happened. It was in Kaduna. Yes. Yes. So
55 dead.
If you are, including you, El Rufai.
Yes.
You are now the governor. You are now the governor of Kaduna State. Why are there so many young men roaming around the streets jobless, with no skills?
No training.
There are a million things people could be doing in Nigeria that will earn them money. 1 million things. All they need is a helping hand.
Yes, sir. Go on.
Yes. No, I just want to bring to our listeners that there was a northern governor. I forgot which state.
Bazio Deluga, could you come closer to the microphone?
Oh, okay.
Okay, better.
Yes.
Yes.
I was saying that there was a northern governor. I don't know which state that he was that had an initiative to put young men to work, and all he did was to buy 6,000
wheelbarrow.
Wheelbarrow and shoe shining equipment.
Yes.
Okay,
that's what he did with the money.
That's commendable, but I don't think that is the kind of education that will move the state forward.
I
mean, so if the governor is thinking that the way that youth is going to be able to earn enough living to put himself, to have marry a wife, have children, and support that family is through shoe shining and maybe carrying load on the wheelbarrow.
And the question is, when you have 20,000 shoe shiners,
how many people are
how many shoes?
How many shoes can they shine to make a living? You understand?
Yes.
So you see that the issue is systemic.
Yes, it is.
And that is why, if you hear, that is why the separatist self-determination movements that are going on all over Nigeria is rooted in this whole thing, this whole picture, that people just want to unhook from this wagon that is going nowhere.
Yes.
Because you could see the future. I mean, what you see today is how you prepare for the future.
Yes.
If you see how they are preparing today, you know that nobody's ready.
There's no future.
Yes, so if the man in charge is trying to make you a shoe shiner, and your mind is telling you that you should be an engineer or a farmer, a successful agroeconomist or agricultural engineer, farming the land and producing to the world, you see the dichotomy.
Yes.
So when we live in a space, a political space, where Nigeria exists now, where you have the Boko Haram trying to create a caliphate in the northeast, where they don't want education, Western education, they don't want girls to go to school. They went and kidnapped a bunch of Christian girls who go to school and send them, took them away to Islamize them and re-socialize them into Islam. How can you move forward in the 21st century? That is why you hear about all these separatist movements all across Nigeria saying, no, it's high time that everybody kind of like,
yes.
Let's
if that's the kind of country you want, I want out of it.
Yes. No, many of us that came out of Nigeria we were all products of public school.
Yes.
It used to be that you went to a public school to get the best education. Private schools had Sharia records.
Yes.
Well, they still do, but in a different way now.
And that is the truth.
Yep.
Because a lot of the private schools are not under regulation and they do all manner of things, despite all the exorbitant money that have priced out the common man from participating in the private school phenomenon movement, but that have left the public school system anemic and not really anything to write home about. So you have a crisis that is brewing all across the country because you have people in charge who have no record or no vision for education.
So the question then becomes, with this violence that we've talked about, possible causes, what should the solution be?
Yes.
What should the solution be?
How should we solve this problem? Knowing that, at least for the short term,
yes,
maybe even for the long term, that there is still this Nigeria boundaries that includes everybody. What would the people who are sitting pretty in the west or in the south or even other parts of the north do to make sure that we get the rest of our ship going the same direction and we get the rest of our brothers' education and sisters' education that they need and the skills they need to join the 21st century?
If anybody, you see, OCC, it's only the tree that heard the conversation that is going to be cut down and it was still standing in that place. That is an Igbo idiom.
Yes, yes.
For most of the Southerners in the north, you are not safe because you don't have a government that is willing to protect your life and property. Period. We need to come to that realization.
Yep.
So slowly transition yourself out of where you are to a place where you may feel safer. One of the things that the Jews learned after World War II was that they needed a sovereign nation to protect Jews all over the world,
yep,
and to actually a place of their own first. And with that sovereignty gained, then their national identity can mean something that ought to be protected, which means you at least have somebody who can scream and shout if somebody is trying to clean you in a different neighborhood. That is the challenge that most ethnic groups in Nigeria face.
So it sounds like
in a situation where you have the whole military and the security apparatus controlled by the Fulanese, you are not getting the protection that you need. That is why it is so important that the conversation around political restructuring ought to be given the light of day, because regions that could have the ability to protect their life and property of their people can also help hold accountable other regions and other areas,
yes,
accountable for the life and property of their indigents, of those who come out of those regions. That is what is needed to be able to resolve this matter. Because, like I said, no,
that was
so I go that is used to picking up the chick
Yes.
from the hen's brood
Yes.
has not given up diving and collecting a chick.
No.
So
That's the nature. So, but at first I thought you were going to say similar to what Izuchukwu Nkobo, who's listening to us, is saying, which is that the solution to Nigerian problem is for every one of these nations inside Nigeria to go on their own separate ways. But I think I heard something different. You're saying restructuring, not in that we break up and everybody go to your own tent, or Israel. You're saying, let's get a structure that allows us to be able to own our own destiny. And the example you gave was the security apparatus of the state should be under state control at least, so that the state could make a different decision, and actually in being able to secure life and property of these people in their states, they could be able to advise similar states near to them how that could be done. Is that what you're saying, or did I misread it?
No. What, yeah, I mean, it's, you see, in any true federation, the right to secede is guaranteed.
Yes.
Should be guaranteed.
Even in the USA, Texas could secede.
But we need each other, like Mazoba to say.
Yes.
No,
you can't.
No
man
is in the Igbo wisdom of we need each other. That is not. That is an important aspect of life. Life is, we are all interdependent.
Yes.
Nation states are interdependent. But at least,
yes,
we need to give each other some reasonable distance.
Breathing room. You
really
stretch your
like the Americans will say, give me my space.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's what the Igbo have. We've lived in this neighborhood for centuries, for years.
Yes.
And we had been able to survive, and we are able to grow ourselves and develop. Yes. So the reason what is difficult now is that we've lost control of our destiny. And we can no longer guarantee protection. If you remember, that was the purpose. Biafra was nothing rebellious. There was nothing rebellious in Biafra. But at some point, people ran back home and said, look, this is the place where we feel safe, and we want to be able to guarantee the safety and of our lives of our children and our wives. And that's the reason why our fathers, that's why the reason why our fathers stood up to defend the dignity, their dignity as men, to guarantee the safety of their wives and their daughters and their sons.
And for those listening to us who may disagree and live in Chicago, or could be able to call the number in Chicago from wherever you are, it is 773-942-7167. Before Mazi Obasi, I want to say this because the one thing the current secessionist movement in the Southeast miss is exactly what Mazi Odeluga just said. That Biafra wasn't just a bunch of people who just say, you know what, we are tired of this country, we are leaving. It was a security boundary for people who were being maltreated outside those boundaries. It was a place of safety. And actually, if you remember the conference that happened in Ghana, Aburi, what was supposed to happen from then on was a return to the constitution that existed before, that guaranteed federation the way it stood before, so that Nigeria will move on with the states having a way to give security to their people. So the current secessionist movement have it wrong. They think that Biafra was just a bunch of people who got up and said, we are leaving, we are tired of this place, we are way better, we don't want to be associated with you. I understand that it's not as simple as I say it, and it's not as sensational as I'm making it, but I want people to think about that, what Mazio Delga said. Not what I said, that we all need each other. And even if there's a boundary and there's a country, that you still have people on the other side of the boundary that you have to associate with. So that's my diatribe, Mazio.
Yeah, well, what I have to say about this is, again, echoing in many ways what both of you have said already. Whether we like it or not, you cannot take your part of Nigeria and move it somewhere else. You cannot do that.
I wish we could get it on the ocean.
Because I know there are many that would like to, yes, put a sail and sail it, maybe go and anchor it in South Africa or somewhere else. That ain't going to happen. Our neighbors are going to be our neighbors permanently. To the extent that land boundaries are not immovable, unless you wish to build a wall to prevent people from moving in and out across borders. What happens across your borders are, at the end of the day, important to your own security. If you think that is not true, go and ask Israel. So, at the end of the day, as we are thinking, and when I say we, I am saying we as the collective ethnicities that make up Nigeria, as each one of us is thinking about how do I advance my own ethnicity, you must also be thinking, how do I carry along other ethnicities? Because if there is a big disparity, it creates problems that will affect you. So, it is not, I for one, do not wish northern Nigeria to stay in darkness forever. No. I'm sure all of us, at the University of Nigeria in Nsukka, we had people from northern Nigeria that were in school with us. Yes. They were very bright. They participated. Yes. Here in the United States, in very different places, you see, and I'm not talking about the ruling class now. No. We talk about ordinary. Yes. Okay, because I will even point out that at my high school, one of our high school conventions that we held in Abuja, one of the major speakers was someone from northern Nigeria who pointed out that it took him coming to the south, to live in the south among Ndi Igbo, go to school with Ndi Igbo to begin to understand Ndi Igbo. And that when he came back, he realized that the problem in his place was not a lack of drive per se, but more opportunity. You know, when everybody is sitting and happy with where you are. Yes. It njepu. Njepu amaka. So, I feel very strongly that it is time that the rest of Nigeria begins to put pressure, and I mean serious pressure. And let me even make a different cast on this, because there are quite a few religious leaders in northern Nigeria who over the years have spoken out against the plight of their young men and women. Yes. Some of them are silenced, especially when you become too vocal. I've become a thorn in the sight of I don't care that you are Muslim. That is your choice, your life. Live it, that's good. Yes. But do not deny young men and women the ability to use their hands and use their God-given talent to make something of themselves. Right. Oh, amen. Breeding young men and women to be pawns in a chess game that only you are playing is ultimately evil. You are playing God. Yes, you are. And I am sure that if the prophet came and sat with you, he would say things that are very not complimentary to you. Yes. Yes. Yes.
And what is instructive in all these conversations is that if you compare the assessment of the North and her youth and her people, in 1952, when Sadwana granted that interview to ITV, yes, it is still the same. Yeah. But he couched it in the fact that the Southerners, the Igbo, was coming to the North to take over. The boogeyman. We see it with every politician. It is a result. Every single politician must give the people a common enemy. Yes. Yes, but what it was at that time was that the Igbo had the education that the British needed, and the colonial government employed those who had the skills.
Yeah.
And so it was an equitable situation that required some level of proficiency to be admitted into public service, and the Igbo qualified. Now, at the eve of independence, there was an effort by the British to increase the northern quota and northern participation. Right. And so the standard was reduced. I'm reading a book, Hubris, talking about the military government in Nigeria. And the author had been very, very clear in documenting how the qualification to be an officer in the Nigerian army was slowly, from 1957, when the British began to relinquish control to the Nigerian soldiers, they started reducing, the British started reducing the qualification to be an officer, to the point that he came from being a graduate in which people like Emeka Odumegwu was admitted straight out of Oxford in England, to you have to be a teacher training. And then to the point that you have now PMB being an army officer, and still we are looking for a certificate.
Army general.
And we still have
Army general. And we are still looking for his first school, his secondary school certification. So that was how the dumbing down on the standards has created mediocrity.
As a deliberate policy by the British.
That's right. To catch up the North.
That's how we started.
And yet, they have not caught up.
No.
Yes.
Still, if you go to the North, you don't have Southern, there is a disparity in the medical profession, for example, and you think that by now, Ahmadu and all the universities would have produced enough medical doctors? No. If you think they'll be hiring physicians that from other parts of the Nigeria? No. By the time we showed up for NYC in Bauchi, 1/3 of my class came to serve in Bauchi State. And out of that number, I was the first physician in our Kaleri local government. I'm the only. And that central, it was a comprehensive health center where I served in Kresi. I was the only doctor in the entire local government of our Kaleri. And that is still the story all throughout the North. And you ask yourself, where have all these smart Fulani leaders and political and military governors that have come through, the emirs, where have they been with all this happening? And meanwhile, in the East and in the West, you see, individual and private enterprise that is building up the state and the infrastructures.
I think it's a shame that that's where we will have to break it, because it started getting interesting towards the end. But we
can continue next Saturday.
More time next Saturday. Join us on Tuesday between 9 and 10 p.m. U.S. Central when we discuss our entire globe, and we will talk about the caravan and all the other stories that you heard out of the U.S. and North America. We will talk about what's going on in Europe with Prince Charles and Camilla planning their trip to Africa.
Maybe we'll talk about this new trend of bombing. You heard about the Jewish synagogue that was bombed today.
Yes. And the pipe bombs that are being made. So there's a lot to talk about next Tuesday. Yes.
And they all go back to one common denominator: hate speech.
Hate speech.
The first step in genocide is hate speech.
Yes.
That begin to cast others, people as other, and begin to dehumanize them.
Well, join us Tuesday for a continuation of that conversation on the global stage. But on Saturday, we will dig deeper into Africa, and this conversation is not going away. It's actually only begun. And I will hate to, although we are way past time, I'll hate to just stop on this, on where we stopped. It's just it's not a cliffhanger, it's in the middle. So, 30 seconds, Mazio Basi, what should our viewers, our listeners take away from all this conversation?
Africans are diverse, but we are, if nothing else, joined together by two common factors: color and discrimination. Onyu wajuru anaha onwe.
Mazio Deluga.
Abatobi onye bụ nwanne ya.
Nwanne ya.
Your neighbor is your near kinsman. That's why the good book tells us, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yes.
If we practice that, which is indigenous African thinking,
yes,
we will not have the kind of crisis we have in Africa.
And from me, two things I noted actually about the dumbing down of the standard. I think it's attributed to one of the smartest guys who came up with the EA equals MC square. I'll let you figure out how that is. He said that the problem is not that we are raising our standards, that the problem is that we are lowering our standard and we are going to achieve it. And it seems like that's what's happening in Africa. The other thing is we always come back to the colonial masters and what's happening abroad and the people that are affecting us. And if we work together, not just one person at a time, if we work together, I think we should look at what Martin Luther King Jr. said. He said that the only way a man could ride your back is if you have your back act. So if you don't have your back act, if Africa stops arching its back, nobody will be riding it. So we need to stand tall and face together what's facing us. Ngwano, goodbye.
Ndewono.
Dalono. Kachifo.
Ndewono.
I am Mazi Ejikebe Obasi.
Na Mazi Okay Okachukwu.
This is Straight Talk Radio. I am Mazi KK Odeluga. Mazi Ejikebe Obasi.
Na Mazi Okay Okachukwu.
This is Straight